The rainbow was now dangling in the air below the cloud. The peach was also just below the level of the cloud, and it was heading directly towards the rainbow, travelling rather fast. "We're lost!" Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet again. "The end has come!"
"I can't stand it!" wailed the earthworm. "Tell me what's happening!"
"We're going to miss it!" shouted the ladybird. "No, we're not."
"Yes, we are!"
"Yes, yes, no, oh my heavens!" "Hold on, everybody!" James called out, and suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the peach went crashing into the top of the rainbow. This was followed by an awful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the Cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled up with the silk strings that went up from the peach to the seagulls. The peach was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travellers, and James Henry Trotter, glancing up quickly, saw the faces of 1,000 furious Cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of the cloud. The faces had almost no shape at all because of the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses, no mouths, no ears, no chins, only the eyes were visible in each face, two small black eyes glinting malevolently through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing of all. One Cloudman, a huge hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least, suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get to one of the silk strings above the peach. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above them, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching for the nearest string, and they saw him grab it and cling to it with his hands and legs, and then, very, very slowly, hand over hand, he began to come down the string.
"Mercy! Help! Save us!" cried the ladybird.
"He's coming down to eat us," wailed the old green grasshopper. "Jump overboard!"
"Then eat the earthworm first!" shouted the centipede. "It's no good eating me, I'm full of bones like a kipper."
"Centipede!" yelled James. "Quickly, bite through that string, the one he's coming down on." The centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the silk string in his teeth and bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above them, a single seagull was seen to come away from the rest of the flock and go flying off with a long string trailing from its neck. And clinging desperately to the end of the string, shouting and cursing with fury, was the huge, hairy Cloudman. Up and up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky, and James Henry Trotter, watching him with delight, said, "My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all for one seagull to be able to pull him up like that. He must be all hair and air." The rest of the Cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they let go the ropes they were holding, and then, of course, down went the rainbow, both halves of it together, tumbling towards the earth below. This freed the peach, which at once began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travellers were not in the clear yet. The infuriated Cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard and horrible objects. Empty paint buckets, paint brushes, step-ladders, stools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, dead rats, bottles of hair oil, anything those brutes could lay their hands on came raining down upon the peach. One Cloudman, taking very careful aim, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud right onto the centipede himself. The centipede screamed with anger.
"My legs!" he cried. "They're all sticking together. I can't walk, and my eyelids won't open. Oh, I can't see, and my boots are ruined."
But for the moment everyone was far too busy dodging the things that the Cloudmen were throwing to pay any attention to the centipede.
"The paint is drying," he moaned. "It's going hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything."
"You can still move your mouth," the earthworm said, "and that is a great pity."
"James," bawled the centipede, "please help me. Wash off this paint. Scrape it off, anything."
It seemed like a long time before the seagulls were able to pull the peach away from that horrible rainbow cloud, but they managed it at last, and then everybody gathered around the wretched centipede and began arguing about the best way to get the paint off his body. He really did look a sight. He was purple all over, and now that the paint was beginning to dry and harden, he was forced to sit very stiff and upright, as though he were encased in cement. And all 42 of his legs were sticking out straight in front of him like rods. He tried to say something, but his lips wouldn't move. All he could do now was to make gurgling noises in his throat. The old green grasshopper reached out and touched him carefully on the stomach. "But how could it possibly have dried so quickly?" he asked. "It's rainbow paint," James answered. "Rainbow paint dries very quick and very hard."
"Oh, I detest paint," Miss Spider announced. "It frightens me. Oh, it reminds me of Aunt Spiker. The late Aunt Spiker, I mean, because the last time she painted her kitchen ceiling, my poor darling grandmother stepped into it by mistake when it was still wet, and there she stuck. And all through the night we could hear her calling to us, saying, 'Help, help, help!' Oh, and it was heartbreaking to listen to her. But what could we do? Not a thing until the next day when the paint had dried. And then, of course, we all rushed over to her and calmed her down and gave her some food. Oh, believe it or not, she lived for 6 months like that, upside down on the ceiling with her legs stuck permanently in the paint. She really did. We fed her every day. We brought her fresh flies straight from the web. But then, on the 26th of April last, Aunt Sponge, the late Aunt Sponge, happened to glance up at the ceiling and she spotted her. 'A spider,' she cried, 'a disgusting spider. Quick, fetch me the mop with a long handle.' And then, oh, it was so awful I can't bear to think of it." Miss Spider wiped away a tear and looked sadly at the centipede. "You poor thing," she murmured. "I do feel sorry for you."
"Oh, it'll never come off," the earthworm said brightly. "Our centipede will never move again. He'll turn into a statue, and we shall be able to put him in the middle of the lawn with a bird bath on the top of his head."
"We could try peeling him like a banana," the old green grasshopper suggested. "Or rubbing him with sandpaper," the ladybird said.
"Now, if he stuck out his tongue," the earthworm said, smiling a little for perhaps the first time in his life, "if he stuck it out really far, then we could all catch hold of it and start pulling, and if we pulled hard enough, we could turn him inside out, and he'd have a new skin."
There was a pause while the others considered this interesting proposal. "I think," James said slowly, "I think that the best thing to do—" Then he stopped. "What was that?" he asked quickly. "I heard a voice. I heard someone shouting." They all raised their heads, listening. "Shh! There it is again." But the voice was too far away for them to hear what it was saying.
"It's a cloud man," Miss Spider cried. "I just know it's a cloud man. They're after us again."
"It came from above,"
the earthworm said, and automatically everybody looked upward, everybody except the centipede, who couldn't move.
"Ouch!" they said. "Help! Mercy! We're going to catch it this time."
For what they now saw, swirling and twisting directly over their heads, was an immense black cloud, a terrible, dangerous, thundery-looking thing that began to rumble and roar even as they were staring at it. And then from high up on the top of the cloud, the faraway voice came down to them once again, this time very loud and clear.
"On with the faucets!" it shouted. "On with the faucets! On with the faucets!"
3 seconds later, the hole underneath of the cloud seemed to split and burst open like a paper bag, and then out came the water. They saw it coming. It was quite easy to see because it wasn't just raindrops. It wasn't raindrops at all. It was a great solid mass of water that might have been a lake or a whole ocean dropping out of the sky on top of them, and down it came, down and down and down, crashing first onto the seagulls and then onto the peach itself, while the poor travellers shrieked with fear and groped around frantically for something to catch hold of, the peach stem, the silk strings, anything they could find, and all the time the water came pouring and roaring down upon them, bouncing and smashing and sloshing and slashing and swashing and swirling and surging and whirling and gurgling and gushing and rushing, and it was like being pinned down underneath the biggest waterfall in the world and not being able to get out. They couldn't speak. They couldn't see. They couldn't breathe. And James Henry Trotter, holding on madly to one of the silk strings above the peach stem, told himself that this must surely be the end of everything at last. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the deluge stopped. They were out of it, and it was all over. The wonderful seagulls had flown right through it and had come out safely on the other side. Once again, the giant peach was sailing peacefully through the mysterious moonlit sky.
"I am drowned,"
gasped the old green grasshopper, spitting out water by the pint.
Oh, it's gone right through my skin, the earthworm groaned. I always thought my skin was waterproof, but it isn't, and now I'm full of rain.
Look at me! Look at me! Shouted the centipede excitedly. It's washed me clean! The paint's all gone! I can move again!
Well, that's the worst news I've had in a long time, the earthworm said.